Hey guys, it's Stephanie, and today I thought I would sit down and chat with you guys about minimalist living situations, in particular, the tiny house. So first off, let's talk about what is a tiny house. A tiny house is generally considered to be 400 to 500 square feet or less, depending on who you talk to, where the cutoff is for that. But they are intentionally small dwellings. If you've seen any of the tiny house TV programs or read a book about tiny homes, you know that a very common type of tiny home is one that's actually built on the back of a trailer. Those are usually 100 to 200 square feet, so they're even smaller than kind of a large tiny house. And they are usually mobile. You can tow them with a pickup truck and move them around to different locations. So before I let you guys know kind of what I think about tiny houses and whether or not I see myself ever living in a tiny house, let me give you a quick update on my current living situation so we can kind of compare. Currently, I'm living in a 1,000 square foot, 2-bedroom, 2-bath apartment with my husband, and we have 2 birds. And I can say that this apartment is definitely too big for us. We really don't make a lot of use out of the second bedroom. So let's start out with the things that I absolutely adore about tiny houses. I love that they're small, that there's just no wasted space anywhere in a tiny house because you literally don't have any space to waste. You know, tiny houses are low maintenance because there's less space to do clean. I know moving from a 1-bedroom apartment to a 3-bedroom condo, just the amount of housework increased so much because there was so much more square footage to take care of it. I love being in a smaller place again, and I would really, really love to be able to move into yet another smaller space. Another thing I love about the tiny homes is they are significantly more affordable than your typical home. Now, of course, house prices do vary a lot depending on where you are located. A lot of tiny homes can be had for around $30,000, which, you know, that could be a down payment on a mortgage depending on your area and how big of a house you're looking at. Now, of course, that doesn't include land, which is a whole nother issue, but having financial freedom and a financial plan and making good financial decisions is something that's really important to my husband and I. If you're interested in that, I do have a video about minimalism and money. I will go ahead and leave that linked down in the comment section, in the description box below if you're interested to hear some of my thoughts about finances and money management as a minimalist. But that's definitely something that makes tiny homes really attractive. And of course, they're just so cute. I just love them. They're cute, they're adorable. There are some really, really creative layouts for tiny homes, and that just makes me so happy on the inside. Now, there are definitely some downsides to a tiny home that I could see for myself and my husband. Now, first off, I'm really not interested in the mobile aspect of a tiny home. I know that is a huge attraction for some people, but I'm really not interested in having a home that is mobile that doesn't really have a lot of benefit to me. I would much prefer a tiny home that would actually have a foundation and have a lot of the amenities of a standard home, such as a real flushing toilet and, you know, not have to be worried about where am I going to get water and electricity and how am I going to hook that up to my tiny home. Also, you know, if you have a tiny home and it's mobile, you want to be able to move it yourself, then you have to have a truck, which is also another expensive investment. My husband and I have Fiat, so owning a truck would be a huge lifestyle change for us. So that mobile aspect of many tiny homes is not something that I would be interested in having. Another thing that makes those trailer tiny homes a hard decision for us to make would be our birds. So we have 2 birds. They each have their own cage because they will fight if we were to cage them together. They're 2 different species. It just wouldn't end very well. So they definitely take up a lot of space. We like to let them out to be able to roam around and have a larger area of the world that they can live in than just their little cages. So that is something that's important to us, to make sure that we have enough space for the birds. And I'm thinking 200 square feet, there's not really a lot of room for animals. I know I have seen people have small dogs or maybe a cat in their tiny house, but really I'm just not sure what we would do with birds if we lived in a 200 square foot tiny home. Another thing that comes with living in one of those tiny homes is the question of building codes and finding a place to keep your tiny home that is legal. Now, I haven't done a ton of research into the building codes in my particular area, but just from reading about other people's experience and watching some tiny home shows on TV, I know that that can definitely be a concern. So a lot of people tend to stay out in the country where, you know, if you lived in town, there's going to be more codes and zoning things that you have to deal with. That is not something that I'm personally interested in. I'm much more of a city girl than a country girl. I'm not interested in living way out in the wild. And it just makes me nervous to be living in a place where, you know, I could be evicted from my own home because it doesn't meet the zoning requirements. Another option would be to put it on a property where someone else lived, that you could claim that actual physical home as your residential address, even though you're technically living in the tiny home. But again, you generally have to be somewhere a little bit farther out where you are not going to have to worry about whether or not the neighborhood allows you to have campers and things. I know the area where I live, a lot of the neighborhoods are deed restricted. They have homeowners associations and a whole bunch of rules about those kind of things, which would make it very difficult for us to find a place to put a tiny home like that. Another thing that would be really difficult for us if we moved into a tiny home is that we would have some really hard decisions to make about certain items in our home. Currently, we have enough space for these items, so we have not decided to part with them, but they do kind of take up a lot of space. One of those is my collection of costumes. I used to do a lot of historical costuming when I was in Ohio. We were very involved with the Ohio Renaissance Festival. Whoop, whoop. And I haven't really been able to get into the costuming community down here in Florida. There's just not really anything that is local enough that I've been able to find. So I'm kind of at a crossroads and not quite sure what to do with my costumes. I'm not ready to let go of them because I put a lot of time and effort into them. I really love them. I love wearing them. I love dressing up. But on the other hand, I don't really have anywhere to wear them at the moment. And just the sheer amount of time and effort that I put into creating them makes it really hard to let go. So that's something that, because we have the space, I haven't had to make the decision about whether or not to let go. But obviously, if we moved into a tiny home, there's really not room for two great big giant tubs of costumes. And we do have some other items that kind of fit into that same category. So if I were to live in a tiny home and I could design my own and kind of pick everything out, I think I would be more on the larger side of the tiny home. I think closer to 500 square feet would work really great for my family and our lifestyle. It was definitely big enough where we could still have people over. We would have space for the birds to come out and play. Like I said earlier, I'm really not interested in the mobile aspect of the tiny homes. I really would love to be in a home where we have city sewer, city water, and electric, all that comes with the home, and, you know, a regular home with a foundation. That would really be my ideal situation for utilities. I'm really not interested in the whole composting toilet business. That just weirds me out. I've done that. I've done latrines and porta-johns, and I've done a lot of camping, and I'm just really not interested in that kind of thing in my everyday life. So taking all of this information and kind of boiling it down, I would love to live in a tiny home. But the problem is, I'm just not sure if such a home exists in my area or is even legal in my area. Putting a building on a foundation definitely adds in a whole bunch of other zoning rules and building codes that are not necessarily associated with the more mobile style tiny homes, and I'm really not sure that I would be able to find a place, even a condominium, that is only 500 square feet in the area where I live. So we'll probably end up in a place approximately the same size we're living now. I would really love to have a house that is at most 1,000 square feet, again at most 2 bedroom, 2 bath, and live a minimalist lifestyle that way. So I want to know what you guys think. Have you ever thought about living in a tiny home? Personally, I would absolutely adore vacationing in a tiny home, and I think that would be super awesome and really fun to do for maybe a week or so, and just vacation in a tiny home and just get that experience of living so small. But I'm not expecting to be living in a tiny home myself anytime soon. So go ahead, leave me a comment down in the comment section below. Where would you live in a tiny home?